Today we have our first guest, Alia Azamat Ashkenazi. Welcome, Alia. So she's an award-winning filmmaker, so focusing on screenwriting and directing, and also you do script supervision. So
Yes.
welcome. We're very excited to have you. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and your previous screenwriting projects so we can get to know you?
Well, I immigrated to United States from Russia, from Moscow, where I grew up. And previously to that, I had a journalist and theater director and poetry, somewhat a career. And but only when coming to US, I focused on screenwriting mostly because I went to film school for screenwriting and I graduated as a screenwriter and playwright. So that kind of jump started my exploring the screenwriting art and craft. And film school gave me my first couple of gigs as a doctor, as I was giving notes to people, and then connected me to some of the filmmakers who were polishing their scripts, but the scripts were so bad I came on as a co-writer and we tried to do that. So those are a couple of first projects that I have were co-writing, and I did thrive as a co-writer, I would say, because it's just so collaborative. The filmmaking is so collaborative. I just apply the same people's skills to writing as well. And right now I'm in development of 2 feature films, both co-written, and one is a very independent film that it will be done for maybe about $1 million. And another one that I just re-optioned is a multi-million-dollar, very high stakes, high budget film. So I have experience in writing both. And I actually feel like independent and low budget screenwriting skills are very helpful for big blockbusters as well.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be, this is basically a conversation around screenwriting and how when you're, like you were saying, when you're starting out, you don't really have access to funding right away. Like most of the time you have to self-produce and you have to put together your team and start with like a very mini budget, whether you're doing your short film or your feature film, and depending on what level you're going to be at. So it is very important when you're writing your first screenplay and when you're writing the first few screenplays that you're going to be self-producing or bringing to very small, I guess, production companies, to keep in mind that you're writing for a specific budget, right? So you have experience with all kinds of budgets, so that's really interesting. Going back to the ultra budgets, what would you say when you're writing the script, when you're sitting down to even write the concept or think about the concept? What would you say are the key points that you have to keep in mind? Because I know people say that you have to keep the cast very small, keep the amount of locations also very small. What would you, if you were to give us some guidelines that you have for yourself, what would be some key points that you have to keep in mind when you're even thinking about the concept of your screenplay?
Well, location would be number one. Location, you know, just like in real estate. I think that is the easiest thing you can do for yourself, is just save yourself trouble and stop putting people on stadiums to have a scene, you know, in crowded Central Park. You know, it's not going to happen on a low budget, or it will, but it will take up all the money from something that you can actually focus on when you actually direct. But I'm not sure, like all of our people here, are you guys gonna direct your scripts? Are you thinking forward for the production, and that's why you have to focus on the script and the budgeting of it? Or are you just looking for writing a script and selling it, just trying to make it with a producer who has a low budget? So if someone can just write it down and we read who we have, just to feel the crowd, that will be very helpful. I think it will steer our conversation into that. But for the first thing I think about is location, and how can I make it less location-y for the script. And I'm a big proponent of one house, one location stories, maybe because I come from a theater experience, but maybe it's just because it's so interesting and it adds to the conflict, or the location can become a character on its own. But I like putting people in one space and seeing and throwing a conflict at them and drama and seeing how they behave, because that is I think naturally is very interesting for people to watch is other people getting stuck and dealing with it, you know. So as less of locations you can get, the better for you. And I think the keeping the cast smaller is also a very important thing to keep in mind. You can tell a compelling story with a couple of actors who are complex, and the characters who are tormented or good or bad, but and everything in between. And please be careful about your subplots. This is one of the most common mistakes that new writers, filmmakers do, is throw a lot of characters in at the protagonist and making that protagonist deal with all these characters. And I think it steers away from the main story. And unless your B story or your subplot is actually thematically very close to the journey the protagonist is going through, throw it away. You don't need it.
Exactly. So that's a very good point. Is the I guess I would call it the essence of the storytelling mashed up with the producing, right? So you're mentioning, like, you're talking about two different levels. So you're saying you're like, I guess, A story versus your B story. So how would you say in your writing process, when you're thinking of all these different, when you're juggling all these different elements to make something that has high stakes and that is very valuable while being marketable, can you talk a little bit about your process and what you actually do to, like, juggle all these elements together, and for it to kind of allow to streamline the story and gain clarity on the story that you actually want to tell, when you have all these ideas and you have your main characters and then your subplots and everything, and you kind of want to merge them together while also keeping the cost very low?
Well, first of all, as a writer, I never, that's my personal technique, but I never sit down at my computer and type fade in whenever I have a good idea. Good ideas are free, they're cheap, you're never gonna make them, you can have 100 of them. I have notes, and it's like, I will never write the script for each good idea that I have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so first you have to choose just by a gut feeling, I guess, which one is the most I guess potent in and then just, it's like a like every film's production success is in pre-production. The same thing goes for writing. Every script, especially for screenwriting, every script is coming from its outline, from structure, before you actually type the first dialogue or the first scene. So this is like, actually, this is my process. I have a board. It's a cork board on which I can tap the index cards. So this is my current project that I'm gonna direct. It's a short film, and I had the idea, and I had some kind of a story in my mind of what journey the character will go through, but I never wrote the script. It's been a month, and all I'm doing is spending time by this board trying to figure out first, second, third act, and what is happening in those acts. This is structure. This is one of the most important things you have to learn and master as a screenwriter, is structure. Because from the good structure comes a good film and comes a good plot. And then one of the most important things for independent filmmakers, I think, is the characters. So here you have a protagonist tree, I call them a character tree, and an antagonist one. So you do those things, and these trees have traits of these characters. Like you have a good traits, negative traits, lies they believe in, their worldview. They're gonna be challenged throughout your film, which will make your film interesting, I think. And then this thing has like a theme, lies, needs and wants and goals, which makes the thematic value of your film big and strong. So before I actually write, I know my story. I never write just like, oh, let me throw this scene in, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this character comes in, and it's all because of the mother, or what, like, you know, it's like I never improvise, I never wing it, because, I mean, there are some writers who are able to do that, but the only successful ones I know who can just sit down and write, have years and years of experience writing it, so it's just a second nature. So unless you are that kind of a writer, I suggest outline, beat sheet, sequence your film before you actually write. So you're more confident, you're not lost when you're actually writing.
So when you're writing your sequences, when you're kind of bringing together the themes and the big questions that you want to ask and how I guess the characters and the stakes and all the situations that you're proposing in your film are kind of metaphors, right, for those big questions that you want to be asking. So when you were describing with this particular project, I don't know the budget for it, but let's imagine you have it would be a very ultra low budget that perhaps like we discussed, like those two different situations, you would be giving to a very small production company, or you would be raising money for yourself. Did you have experiences like going back to your sequences where you were like, well, this is very compelling, I really want to have the mom character because she's bringing this angle of, I don't know, like multi-generational whatever, like some different angle, but because of budget restriction, I am not going to be able to put this character, so I will have to come up to kind of patch up the story in a different way, because I feel like we're being a little bit tortured between the two of them, if that makes sense, and we do want to ask those big questions and have the stakes pretty high, but it would mean more money, more characters, more, subplots and everything. So how do you revise that, and how do you make sacrifices?
Well, let me tell you this about the stakes. The stakes are a conflict,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is basically a conflict in an externalized version of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the conflict comes, I think that the strongest conflict comes from the character making hard decision. And if you remember that your protagonist or your main character or your secondary character makes a hard choice in every scene or in the whole plot of it, they're arriving at that hard choice, it adds a compelling conflict, and it raises the stakes personally for that character and externally if you're doing it right. So you're not necessarily needing to add the, like, if I need to take out the mom because I cannot afford that actor, or I cannot afford to shoot in those locations or something like that, what I would do is I would think why in the first place I added the mother.
Mm-hmm.
What was the mother character adding to the story, external and internal of the character? And I would just look at what they were adding, and I would add to the character or actor I have access to. So what are they representing, this character? If they're representing a struggle of grief, maybe, I don't know, envy, the need for acceptance or fear of abandonment, with whatever I have access to, I will add that thematic value to that. So I would look at all other scenes that I 100% can shoot and would add layers of whatever that character was adding to those scenes.
Right.
So the story doesn't lack it. So no one will know that the character of mother even existed. You know, phone calls are cool too. You know, you can add a phone call, or you can add it as a B-roll or something like people are talking about themselves constantly, especially in the Western world. We subconsciously talk about our problems all the time in every conversation. So in every dialogue, just add it as a subtext, or add it as, like, you just discuss it nonchalantly, because people do that. And a lot of writers forget how people talk in real life. That's why some dialogues are really flat, you know?
That makes sense. So would you say that you have kind of your big bang, and then all these different things are gravitating around that you can always bring towards the universe the mini universe that you're building?
For sure. And I think for independent filmmaking, we should focus as writers and directors who will be directing their scripts on the internal journey of a character. That's the cheapest thing, and that's the most interesting thing. You know, figure out your character, figure out who they are, and what they represent, and what kind of a journey they have to go through, and it's going to be cheap to shoot.
Do you have any in your past experiences and in your work that you've done, especially for ultra budget, did you have to experience that journey, or do you have any specific example when you were building the story and you had to realize that, like we were discussing, um, you had to take another route because you had to go back to the essential? Do you have any specific examples, and whether it was in the writing process or maybe the script was already written and then you were entering pre-production?
Well, it didn't happen to me on my latest project, the short film that I directed and wrote and produced last summer, because uh, I wrote the script knowing the
Hmm.
problems that I'm gonna face in pre-production or in
Hmm.
production. So the biggest tip that I can give you if you are a writer or director and a self-producer is to think about the process of pre-production assistants directors go through, or script supervisors go through, which is,
Hmm.
I'm not sure how much of experience on set you guys have, you tell me, but one of the first things that ads do is break down the script, and they break it down by locations, by actors, to see and schedule the actual shoot. And that is a very important information for a writer, I think, because you don't generally need to know how to break down the script to write a script, but to write a low budget script, but just know that in general, the less locations you have, less cast you have, less time you would spend on a particular scenes or particular sequences. And the good ads also always look for a potential block shoots. So when I was writing Master's Choice, I knew that the internal journey of a character is much more important than external one. But I had one location, two characters, one possible ghost. So that was done. That was taken care of. But you know, those internal journey scenes when the character changes and transforms from scene to another, a lot of independent filmmakers try to put those scenes in the beautiful locations, and like in a forest, in Central Park, they walking, they by the beach. Those scenes are very hard to shoot. So don't shoot yourself in a food and put it somewhere but it's easy to shoot. So everything, all the focus will be on the character. So I needed to show that journey, and I came up with this one shot, which is threaded throughout the whole film and starts from on the first scene and goes till the end, which is God's POV on the bed.
Mm.
Everyone sleeps at night, so everyone can relate to that, and it's a very intimate moment for the character. And in the first scene, the main character is having sex with her boyfriend. It's all great. Next morning, she wakes up, she moves in with him, and throughout the film, we see the same shot, oneer, at night and in the morning. And we
Mm.
see her transformation. It's all in her face, it's all in her body language. You don't need sound for that, you just shoot it. So and I shot the film, and I had 24 minutes. Now it's a 24-minute film. I shot it in 3 days with going OT only once on the last day because we had to wrap. And by the end of the first day, I had 30% of my film completed
Mhm.
because we shot those God's POV. We shot the morning ones at dawn and the night ones at night.
Mhm.
And by the end of the day, I was confident enough that if there's a story to tell, I told one of them. Because if you put those shots back to back without sound, you watch it, you see the transformation of a character. So look for a possibilities of a block shooting when you write your script, because when you think about the character's journey, again going back to the board, when you see their transformation, how they change, how they take the new information or the same notion of something and transform it into something, put
Mhm.
them in the same location, just in your script, and see how they behave in the same environment with another moral or psychological state. That's very interesting to watch, and it actually shows the audience the same thing over and over again, which kind of adds to the visual language of your film. If you're looking for a direction, I think that only adds value to that.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. I like the idea of thinking ahead of the blocking, especially because I know a lot of you guys are directors and screenwriters at the same time. So you are thinking about your visual language when you're writing your film, in case you're anticipating directing your own film, right? So you told me about, so I know you have this system, going back to the stakes and going back to the equation. I know you have this the system that you use for yourself that's kind of a little bit like a metaphor. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We were discussing it earlier. I find it very compelling when you're getting a little confused with all this information and you have to go back to the essential.
Yes.
To really focus on the stakes, the story, and then I guess the production value.
Yeah, the production value. So the thing is, when we talked about it earlier, discussing what we're going to talk about, one of the most used words for beginning filmmakers is, but how I make my stakes high, how I make it compelling, and oh, I definitely need a great camera and great lenses for it to look great because it's a visual medium. Yes, it is. But and I looked at my this is the beginning stage. Everything is white. But when we go into the storylines, the subplots, you use the colored ones to just see how much of the color you have. Is just very visual. So I did the same thing for story, stakes, and production value, and I just instinctively chose these colors. And I thought, oh, this looks like a traffic light. So for me, when I would talk to someone about this, I would say story is green. You have to go for it. You go and you just put everything on the gas and focus on it. The most time you spend with a story. With the stakes, you can put the brake on it. You can pause, think about it, but it will only add to the story. Those go together, stakes and the story, because stakes is the conflict, and the conflict adds to the story. Conflict adds to the character's journey, and the production value is a big red. As a filmmaker, as a writer, don't think about it. Just stop. Don't. Production value comes naturally in a pre-production phase of your film, and you should not focus on it as much when you write your script. I would not think about it. Like your location manager, or if you are a location manager, you will look for those places. Yeah. I'm sure you had them in your mind, but you do not necessarily need to add it to your script. Because it might confuse people, your DP or your actors or your production designer, as to what you want, and your vision and your voice has to come from the story.
Absolutely.
And I would not focus on production value at all when I write a script. I mean, I'm a writer director who comes from directing perspective too. When I write the script, and I know that I'm going to direct it, so I naturally think about production and like how the space looks like. But it all comes from the character. If the character is so, don't write ensemble cast about upper class people if you do not have access to the places those people frequent. So in a sense, write what you know and what you have access to, and what you can actually shoot. So think like, is your grandmother owning, like, does she have a lake house? Or, I mean, good for you, but yeah, can you shoot it? Or do you have a neighbor? Do you have a good friend who has I don't know, a store? Can I put a story in a store if I have all access to it? Yes, do it. And it's going to be cheap, and it's going to actually be a challenge that will make you more creative, I think. So don't write out the great visual parts just because they're cool,
So I have, I guess I'm thinking about people are very interested in doing genre films. I'm specifically thinking of horror and thrillers, because I feel like there's a lot of elasticity and fluidity around comedy and drama, that you can set a comedy and a drama or like a romantic comedy or a dramedy in any kind of situation and location with a number of actors. So there's variable with the production value around that. But when somebody really wants to write a horror film, we have an idea of a specific like visual language and production value that is attached to those films so they can stand out. So if somebody wants to write a film that takes place in a haunted house but doesn't have the money to rent a haunted house and has to compromise, what would you be do you have any tips that apply specifically for those type of films that actually need production value without having production value, if that makes sense? That need like a very specific visual language, but you still have to compromise on the story, right?
If you well no one says that you have to like forget the production value. If the production value is kind of important for the high genre films, be it a sci-fi, thriller, or especially horror, with the makeup and the locations and the places, and probably the change and the transformation of the place as the story goes on. But if you are willing to do that story, and if that's what interests you, I would cut down on everything else. Then I would cut down on the actors and ask actors to work for free or work on a scale. And then I would do everything I could by myself. Again, with with all the hats that you're wearing yourself when you're self-producing, I would do everything by myself. I will just spend more time with it, and I will not rush into that. I will look on eBay and Amazon, get those props, and not care about it much. Get someone who you can trust as a production manager, and see how crafty you can get. But that goes to the production. I think for horror and thrillers and sci-fi and action adventures, all of those genres are still drama. So even if you think ahead, even if your production value is not is not very big or very compelling or very visually aesthetic, if you have that drama and if you have that story, no one will fucking care if that thing is not looking right for the period you're making. Or like, because people are watching people. That's what's the most interesting thing about it. So if you have a very specific vision, though, like a very specific thing you're trying to say, go for it. It means that that is important for you. So spend all money on it. But if you are just looking about for the horror or thriller just because it's an interesting story for you to tell, then don't spend that much money on it.
That makes sense.
Focus on sense.
And a lot of time for this film, I'm thinking about, for instance, I don't know if you guys have seen it, the film The Others, this horror film that just takes place in one house, one location with like 3 cast members. I think that's a good example of what you're describing, with keeping the cost. I don't remember if it was a period piece or not, but keeping the cost low and having high stakes and having a very compelling story with 3 elements. That's very, I think that's a good point. I think there's, like you were saying, would you say there's always something that you can compromise on in any genre
for sure
capacity, I guess?
Yes, for sure. It's not so much as a compromise. It's just seeing what is more important and more pertinent to the particular story. And I'm seeing like this people. I'm a director who would self-produce or work with a producer in a low budget setting. I'm open to both directing and selling the script, usually write and direct. So we have mostly writers and directors, writer-director slash that thing is slash. So yeah, but are you guys more directors who want to have their career as a director and maybe direct different scripts from different authors going forward, or are you mostly writers? Because that will apply, like that will change a bit the conversation, I think.
Writer and actor.
Director. Okay, director, writer and actor. Okay, cool. Director. I see. So yeah, so if you wanna direct, you have to be a good writer too. I'm sorry. You're looking for a story, or if you are a director, you have a particular vision, or you want to work with actors, you want to work on performances, but think everything you can be as a director is based on a script. If the script is good, your great direction will skyrocket it. If the script is bad, whatever visuals, whatever performances you get from your actors, they will not matter, because the story stays with the audience, performances do stay with the audience, but direction itself is based, the good direction's foundation is a good script. So you have to read all the direct writing non-fiction books of all the screenwriting gurus, read the books about writing novels, writing poetry or anything, because from the strong writing comes a strong directing. So spend as much time as you can afford on a script. Work with your actors on it. That's a big privilege for a writer to have those actors in mind, or maybe cast someone. That helped me a lot with Esther's Choice, because I always had in mind my actor, my main actress when I was writing, and it was really helpful. But the moment the second main character stepped in, the script changed like this. I would spend hours and hours on the phone with my male actor, speaking about that character, and it changed a lot, and he contributed so much to the journey of the character that the script changed a lot. So in a sense, being a writer director actually helps in both, like it goes both ways. Directing helps the writing, and writing helps the directing. So show your script to as much people as you can, because you're going to direct it, and it's a very collaborative art form, and get the feedback and go to the script and change the script right away and transform it.
I'm interested in talking more about collaboration, because specifically for ultra low budget, you are the people that you're going to be working with, because they're not making, and you are their value and their integrity as well. The project is a little bit of all of that, because people are not making a lot of money and they're doing it for other reasons, obviously. So when you, a couple of things, first of all, when you're doing the rewrites, before you're about to enter a pre-production, or you're at the beginning stage of pre-production, and you're dealing with producers, like you're going to have a producer who's going to come on board pretty early on, right? And then help you cast and then build up your departments, right? How can you talk a little bit more about this collaboration around I guess with this, keeping in mind the lens of free rights and keeping in mind the lens of ultra budget, and how you're building your collaborations, and how in the past, what has been successful for you, and what were example of successful collaborations, and something that you learned from. I'm thinking specifically working with producers and working with department heads. So working with your production designers, working with your camera team, and then casting.
I'm always on the lookout for a good crew. In probably somewhere in 2015, I started my career as a script supervisor, and it kind of went off really, really fast. From like student films, I was doing big major films very, very fast. And the thing is that my greatest tip for that, for producers and department heads, is find a position on an actual film set that fulfills you and that you like, that will give you access to all those people for free. Which means that just working on the film, just like being a PA or script supervisor, or someone who is actually is having access to those sets, and just watch people. That was the biggest asset I ever had, is my experience of set as a script supervisor, because it's a film school that you get paid for, because you're standing by the director all the time, and you are so close to the cameraman and to all of the departments that you actually supervise. So you learn a lot from their mistakes, but also you see people in that environment and how they behave. Because let me tell you, like the most talented production designer, the sickest DP out there, they can be assholes. And you're gonna spend time with those people on set on your baby film that you care about. So the personal connection and chemistry is the most important thing, I think, and it precedes the talent, and it precedes the whatever portfolio they have, because especially on a low budget films, you have such limited resources. The vibe's going to be it must be there, because that's the limitations you're going to face and the problems you're going to face is going to challenge your character and their character, and they're going to be fine with it. They have to behave in a certain way that is not going to be like breaking down the whole production, because the DP cannot spend like 3 hours on a light, you know what I mean? It's just so I'm fortunate enough to look around and see those people and think, and I have a roster. I will never show it to anyone, but I have the notes on my iPhone that I take on each person that I might work with or might invite to my own productions. And that's the list that I was making for like 5 years, you know. It's like it's a very important information. So if you can go to sets, please do. It will give you a lot of skills as a writer and as a director, just looking at all other people, because the biggest problem that new directors have is the only thing they do is direct. So the only time they spend on set is when they direct. And how do they know their competition? How do they know how to handle the situations that are not going to arise on their particular set, but then it will happen? So you got to watch all those people, and besides reading a lot of scripts as a writer, because you have to see what other people do, because it will inform your own career path, and it will inform your own skill, your craft. You know, so that's how I look around. I have a list, I rate those people, then I invite them and ask them what they think. And as far as the producers go, I mean, you always have a producer, even if it's the actor who is acting and directing and writing. They also have a producer. I will probably less likely work with them. But you know, just look for those people, look around, because the vibe and the chemistry will give you the first step into your relationship with those people. You know, it's not going to be the script. Never ever a cold call sending a script or a pitch to a producer I never worked with worked for me. You know, so just go and work you know, on the film sets.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of time to build relationships as well.
Yeah, it does.
Because people will disappoint you, and that's part of the game as well.
Sure.
I see we have a couple of questions, so we have about 20 minutes left. So let's open up for you guys to ask questions. The first question: how is the writing different when you will direct it yourself vs when you write it for the vision of another director and creative team?
I think it's very different. When you know that you're gonna direct yourself, you can have all the liberty of putting the stuff on the page. And it goes to the screenwriting format, you know, like when they say don't put like 3 sentences in an action paragraph because no one's gonna read it. It's not done in a screenplay. If you know you're gonna direct it, and if you know that is very important to the story, you can put a half of the page of the action, because that is important for that particular story, right? But when you write for some other eyes who gonna judge it and who gonna see, do I want to direct this film? Do I want to produce this film? You got to be very careful with what you put on the page. And I think your vision as a writer, and you must have a vision as a writer, and that vision can differ from the vision of a director, and they work with each other if you're going to direct. But your vision as a writer cannot be obnoxious on a page if you know that some other director will look at it. Your vision as a writer and your logic of the story will come from the characters and themes and the plot. That you cannot take away from your page. So whatever nice novel-like poetic language you can have or think of when you think about the story, take it away and make it very precise and very short and sweet. So read a lot of scripts that were written by the writers and directed by different people, and see how they transform to screen, because that is one of the most useful exercises, I think, is to watch the films, not just the films that you love, but the films that are very successful in lately. Just have the script in front of you, watch the film, and see how it transformed, especially for the writers who wrote it and the directors who didn't write it, who had no in development kind of involvement to that, and that will give you a sense and the voice of which the writers chose when they wrote that script. And so everything, if you know that, like, and that is happening actually right now with that script that I'm developing with Margarita, is that there's a lot of A-list directors who are looking at that script, because we have 2 agencies working on selling it and shopping it, and those directors are very different. One is a very controversial, and another one is a big blockbuster one who is like, everything is success. And you got to think, as a writer, it got to be appealing for both of them. Mm-hmm. So the language of the script is the formatting of the script is very short, and is very open for imagination, because big actors gonna read it. They don't want to see like, oh, and she winces in pain, oh, and she walks away, or she just breaks the plate. That's a director talking in your head. You do not necessarily need to put it on the script if you know that someone else will direct it and interpret it, because the screenplay is a big technical document open for interpretation, and unless you're the director who is the biggest interpreter of it all, you got to be very careful with what you write. So I suggest reading a lot of scripts of writers, of solely writers.
And I think one of the biggest industry standard of that is TV, the TV world, because you will have a group of writers and they will not, unless they're a guest director and unless they're the creator, the showrunners of the show, it's very unlikely that you will have writers and directing at the same time in the TV world. So it also, like you were saying, it depends on the standards, and if you're writing for narrative or if you're writing for TV or for commercial, if that makes sense, or documentary is a whole other thing. That's very interesting. We have another question. Somebody is saying, I'm from Central Asia. Welcome. My question is a bit out of topic. As an immigrant, do you think you would be able to get the career you're having now if you did not go to film school?
Oh, yes, my favorite question. You do not have to go to film school to be a filmmaker or a successful filmmaker or a successful writer. By all means, no. If you are thinking, it's a big dilemma for you, do I go to film school or do I self-produce my first film? Go and produce your film. Spend that money that you are willing or can afford to spend in a film school and make something yourself. It's not going to be the best thing out there. It's not, but you're actually going to learn by making something. Or learn a lot by reading. It's like, and we're living in 2020. There's so many podcasts and YouTube channels and books. First of all, books that can teach you how to be a good storyteller, because that's what it comes down to is, are you able to tell a compelling story? Do you have it in you? It shouldn't be a personal one. It should be something that's universal. So read a lot of books, watch a lot of films, and try to study yourself. You do not have to go to film school. In my experience, in my personal one, I owe a lot to film school. Because when I came here in 2014, I already had a career. I was pretty successful. I worked with the United Nations for a long time. I directed, I wrote, I was a poet, I had a book. So when I came here, I felt like I'm already something. And what film school did for me, it broke me. It said I am nothing. And I know nothing. And it was the most liberating experience for me. And it opened so many doors for me. And it allowed me to build myself from the zero. And it humbled me a lot. And I think a lot of filmmakers who go to big film schools, they come out of it thinking, oh, now I have the diploma. Now now I am a filmmaker. I am a filmmaker. I am a writer, I am an actor. But you're not, unless you are doing it and making money with it. You are not that person. Everyone can write. No, not everyone is an author, right? Not everyone can put a book on a shelf and say it's mine. Or the same as I have 5 screenplays sitting in my table. Do you have any of them produced? So no, film school is not necessary to have a career, but it's helpful. It is helpful. It was helpful for me. I owe a lot to it, but you do not necessarily need to go to film school.
That makes sense, especially when you're coming from another country and you're thinking of thinking of moving to another country for film school. It's like it has other, like, there's visa stuff, fees and everything.
That might be more helpful if you're an American and you're thinking of going to Colombia, or Tish. I'd rather you spend money on making your first film. But if you are actually an immigrant, which was pertinent to me, that could be your door into the country. Yeah. And it helped me a lot with student visa and then OPT and then opportunity to be in a native world to the career I wanted to have was very helpful. So yeah, for immigrants, I think film school might be more helpful than to other people.
Okay, that makes sense. We're gonna take one last question. So someone is saying, I've had a career as a UPM, so as a producer, but I'm trying to transition to writing and directing, but I'm not breaking through people's image of me as a UPM, as a producer. So how that's a very good question, I think, because a lot of us in the film industry, working professionals in the film industry, wear a lot of hats, and so people know you on one side as one thing, but you have your passion projects, you want to transition as a commercial, like you're a UPM, you want to be a director. Like how do you navigate, and do you change people's bias of yourself, and so they can see you as a whole product?
Yeah, that happens to me too a lot as I build a career as a script supervisor, is that people think about me as a scripty. And it happens a lot with the camera operators and first ACs who've been doing like AC for many years, but then they want a DP, but no one's looking at them as a cinematographers, right? That's a very common thing that is happening. And I'm glad you were able to have a UPM career, because I think that's the biggest asset you can have, is have that production knowledge, and that should help you a lot as a writer director. But I think the first thing you have to do is make your own project and not ask for any producer's permission or opinion or anything. I feel like you have to self-produce. You have to believe in yourself and make the best out of it, and then show it to other producers. And
Absolutely.
then, oh, she can direct. Oh, he can write. You know what I mean? Is having that career as a specific position in film is great. It can give you some money that you can put away for your passion project. But that's why it is a passion project, is that you make it first to show that you can do it. That is the reason, actually, I did, one of the reasons I did Esther's Choice, is that I had the career as a director, and I know I can direct, but anytime the conversation with a producer would go a little further, they would ask, can I see your reel? Or can I show your reel to my commercial clients? Because I like commercials, so easy. I would love to direct commercials, right? But everyone wants to see your reel, or everyone wants to see your script that was produced before. And unfortunately, you're the first person who would actually allow for it to happen. So self-produce the first project, the easiest one, the cheapest one, the most powerful one that you can actually show to people to prove them that you're worth it, that you can do it, because no one will give you I feel like it's very rare that someone gives you a chance out of nowhere just because.
Absolutely. Doesn't, yeah. Especially when it comes to funding.
Yes.
And to go back to one of the previous points that you were making, it's actually a very good thing to wear many hats, because you can make friends on set, right? and you said that you built some of your crews on your films, on your set on your sets as a director and a writer, because you pulled those people out from other sets when you were working as a scriptee. So if you're a producer, if you're working in another department, doesn't mean that you cannot overlap. You can make friends on set and start building that roster that you were saying of collaborators as well, and those people that trust you and will be able to transition onto other projects. And I think, like you were saying as well, it's just you have to trust yourself that you're capable of doing it, that you can do your first project on your own.
You're the only person that cares, you know. You'll be not even your mom or dad. You're gonna be the only person having your own back, you know. But before you rush into that, you got to be prepared, because you're the only person you have, right? So don't disappoint yourself. I would say be hard on yourself and spend as much time as you can afford before actually making your first film, before actually trying to produce your own script. You don't necessarily need to direct. Like, I mean, we had some writers and actors here. You can write a script that you want to act in, but you don't necessarily need to direct it. I highly suggest you don't. So you know, so it's just like, prepare before you actually jump into that, because you only get one chance, you know, with
that's very true. Okay, last question. Some tips. So what books or other media do you recommend for writing through a production lens? So maybe not specifically just screenwriting books like Save the Cat and everything, but something that also allows you to put the producer hat on.
That's too many, but you know, one of them, I would say, I mean, Sidney Lumet's book is great to understand how he approaches directing. Maybe I'm biased, but I think two books on script supervision. One is Beyond Continuity, and another one is Script Supervising for Film. An extremely great source of wisdom and information about the production, because that's what the script supervisor is dealing with for the most part, is the script. And you can just have like a peekaboo into the process of the person who actually deals with your script, with your baby the whole time, and is trying to keep the continuity of it while working with everyone in the production. So I feel like if there's a book that is a very like surprising book that you would never think about, it is read those two books on script supervision. Forget about like whatever the technical stuff they talk about as what pertinent to the actual position and role, and just look at all of the departments, because they both describe the workflow of the film production. And even if you don't have a chance to be on all of these productions, the script supervisor and assistant director are both positions who are there from the get-go, and they see through, especially the script supervisor, because they work with editorial too, and like they're trying to make the editorial not have as big of a headache by being on set. So you can look through the whole process of it and gain insight of like how this is actually happening, how they're gonna shoot it. The 5 C's of cinematography. What is this called? Wait, I have that book. 5 C's of Cinematography. It's a very good book. It's not very big. That talks about actual filming and what is cinematography, is like the 5 C's. The continuity is one of them actually, and so that will give you an insight of what is how to shoot the film. But I mean, writing books, the most important ones, I think the John Truby's book on screenwriting is one of my favorite ones. This I use kind of my take on Save the Cat and Black Snyder. Those are the books you must read anyway. That will inform your writing. And directing books, yeah, Sidney Lumet is one of the most insightful ones, I think.
That's great. Those are great resources. Yeah, any other last quick questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. So thank you so much for your time. I hope this was compelling for everyone, and it gave you an insight inside making your own film, I guess. And I'm really excited to see the projects that are going to be born out of this. And this is really insightful knowledge. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. I mean, I could talk for hours about that, but it
Yeah.
also, like, the only thing, if you can take something from it, just take that the story is the most important thing. The
Yeah.
the it's like the brain and the heart. That's what you should have in your script and in your independent film. If you have logic and cohesion, that is the brain part and the plot. And if you can have a heart, that is a resonance and a thematic value of your film, you're good to go. You don't need anything else. You don't need a lot of money to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. Yeah. And we should all tell the stories that we're meant to tell. This
Yes.
is how we have diverse voices and a world that is a little bit more aware of other people. Great. Awesome. So we're going to have a lot of those other webinars throughout the month of May and June. So you can follow us on social media, SetPatrol_EU on Instagram and SetPatrol on Facebook. We are going to be launching the website pretty soon, the beta version. So if you are a filmmaker and you have any gear, any items that you would like to list, feel free to follow us on social media and join our newsletter so you can learn more about the process. But thank you, everyone.
Hey.
Time.
Bye bye.